and the longer I serve as a pastor, the more convinced I am that community and friendships and small groups are essential for a healthy life. I've seen it time and time again through my ministry and through my life that people who try to live life simply on their own, people who turn away from others, people who try to be that lone ranger in life, that they have more struggles in life than those who have a supportive circle of friends or a community around them. People in isolation are ones whose minds often play tricks on them because they don't have other people to help them look at things from a different perspective or from a different way. They don't hear somebody who says, maybe we should think about this, or maybe we should think about that, or have you thought about this idea, or maybe your idea that you heard on television or whatever isn't right. Maybe there's another way of looking at it. There is no one around if a person's all by themselves to confront them with any issues whatsoever. And so somebody's mind can easily play tricks because they start thinking that what they're thinking is reality and what everyone else should think. Focusing mostly on themselves or only on their own world can easily lead to selfish thinking and can very easily lead to forgetting about the needs and the concerns of others. And when trials and challenges of life come, and we all know the trials and challenges of life will come, they come to each and every person. Those without community and a support network are often left standing. They're often left blowing in the wind, if you will. They're often left all by themselves. They are faced with the challenges of handling a crisis or a problem without the wisdom, without the listening ear, without the personal care, and without the perfect encouragement and the physical presence of another person. It is amazing the difference there is in going through the challenges of life when you have a caring friend, when you have a caring group of people, when you have a small group to walk with you. Being able to know that you don't need to muddle through your issues all by yourselves or all alone gives you the confidence and the strength that you can never, ever have simply by yourself. That is why I believe that the Bible is very, very clear and makes it clear that whenever a person comes to faith in Jesus Christ, they are always to be placed in, they are always to be connected to a community of faith. In fact, the Bible is clear that there is really no faith apart from community. That God from the very beginning always chose to work in people together. I had a seminary professor who often said, many, many times, he said, always remember, there is no such thing as a Robinson Crusoe Christian. There is no such thing as a Robinson Crusoe Christian. Well, these couple of weeks before Lent, our messages are again focusing on Calvary's year-long focus, which is, again, what? Better connected. Better connected. And just like in the fall, there was an opportunity for people to get connected into small groups, and now we want to do that again here in these couple of weeks. And we want to give you that opportunity. Now, some of you have been in a small group, and we want to get those going again, hopefully. And I know some are gearing up again, and some of them really never stop meeting. But maybe you didn't have a chance. Maybe you never got in a small group. And this will be a great opportunity for you to get connected in that place. And there's ways for you to sign up, and we encourage you to do so and be a part of that. We encourage each and every one to be involved in this amazing opportunity for fellowship and growth in your faith in Jesus Christ. Because the thing we always need to remember is that we are always better connected. Therefore, today I am focusing on how community and how healthy relationships are so much better than simply being in a crowd. And we're all in crowds today. We all are in large crowds a lot of times. And my focus is on how, if you truly want to follow Jesus, if you want to have that lifelong faith in Jesus that we talk a lot about here at Calvary, it is important that you be really connected in a faith community. It is really important that you be connected in a congregation. It is very important that you be connected in a Christ-centered group. It is important that each and every one of you has a friend, has a mentor, or has a few committed people who are there to be with you. This is a very difficult and impossible to do if you are simply in a large group, if you are simply isolated and by yourself. Now, Jesus said in Matthew chapter 18, verses 19 and 20, and he talked about how important this is, and you can help me with this passage. He said, "Again, truly I tell you that if you, two of you on earth, agree about anything they ask for, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven." Jesus makes it very clear that his Holy Spirit is truly present with us each day. Yet his presence and his power is experienced most fully when 2 or 3 people are gathered in his name. For where 2 or 3, say it with me, for where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there I am with them. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am with them. Jesus is real when more people are there to help us discern, to help us listen, to help us pray, to help us to seek God's will together. It is God's will from the beginning that we be connected so that we have other people. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, he is present with them. Now, an illustration from my own life was about 28 years ago. I received a letter of call from Shepherd of the Hills Lutheran Church in Shoreview, Minnesota, to be their senior pastor. Now, I know some people oftentimes think that pastors have some kind of a bright light that kind of shines from heaven someplace, or maybe God somehow comes down and speaks directly to them and tells them what to do or whatever. However, it doesn't work that way. At least it has never, ever worked that way for me. Making that decision to take a call as a pastor was very difficult for me. I love my ministry at Zion Lutheran Church in Litchfield, and after 7.5 years, things in that church were going better than ever. I had a great co-pastor, I had a great staff of people. We had just completed an amazing building process, building a brand new building, and why would you ever want to leave when you now finally have a new building? We were on cable TV and we were on the radio each and every week. And we were financially sound. We were very, very financially sound. And people were happy. And the church was going very, very well. It was an exciting ministry of a congregation about this size, about 1,800, maybe a little less than this one. But and to go to Shepherd of the Hills in Shoreview, there were more challenges. That church had been through some struggles. And not only that, but our family was very connected in the schools and in the community. And Kim and the kids all had some very incredible friends. And we loved our first home. We were able to purchase our first home when we moved to Litchfield from Maynard. And so we had this new home. That was a new thing for us. And after living and ministering in this thriving city of over 6,000 people, we really liked the more small town life. And we loved the wonderful, caring people like are here in Alexandria. Therefore, in contemplating and praying about this call to Shepherd of the Hills, I sought the help and the guidance of others. Now, Kim and I certainly talked extensively about this change, and I trust her insights and I trust her common sense perspectives more than anyone else. Yet I also spent some time with some Christian mentors and some Christian friends. The hospital administrator in the town at that time, he was a member of our church, a good friend of mine. And we spent some time because he had moved to some different challenging places, and we talked about what that meant to move his family and how that all had worked. The executive director of the public utilities in town, he was also a member of the church. He'd also moved several times. He had a family that was quite young, and we sat and we talked about the issues, and I asked him questions about what he did in his life and how he made those decisions and what he saw in me. I spent some time with a pastor that I worked with there for 7.5 years, a wonderful pastor. I talked with a friend who was in one of our small groups, and we were in a small group. Zion had small groups at that time. And he sold real estate in town, a wonderful Christian man. And I also spent time with my own father. I've always trusted his wisdom very, very much. In our confidential conversations together, I ask these individuals to help me discern this call of God. I ask them to discern with me whether this growth and whether my gifts as a pastor, is this something that would be good, or am I going to be doing it for the wrong reasons? Am I simply wanting to go to the Twin Cities and go to a different church? Or what do they see in me? And what do they see? Are there things that I need to continue to do there at Zion that maybe I need to keep working on? Or is it just maybe a good time for me? And what about the age of my family? And how did they experience that move in their lives? I asked them a number of questions, but most of all, I asked them if they would pray with me. And we prayed together at each one of the meetings, prayed for God's will to be done. Well, after meeting as 2 or 3 gathered together, I came to believe that God was calling me to that new church and that new community. And it was very hard and very sad for us to leave that community and that ministry, yet the reality is that God often calls us to new places. And I know a number of you are here, probably because God called you maybe to move to this community. Or maybe some of you are struggling with that in your own life, or you're thinking, maybe there's another thing for my job or another opportunity, and how do I know, and where is God calling me? I believe very firmly that God does not work in isolation. I don't believe that it ever should be, my God and I, we just have this wonderful relationship and everything's groovy and we just kind of sit down and he and I talk about it and that's just the way it is. I don't think that's how it works. It is not that God reveals his truth just to me, or he doesn't reveal his truth just to one individual. And we need to always be very careful when we hear people say, God told me that this has to happen and you better do this or whatever. And sometimes we might see them on TV, preachers or other places. We always need to be concerned when somebody says that God gave me this revelation and boy, you better think that way. And unfortunately, there are some people today who are making those kinds of claims. God always chooses to make himself present in community. He always chooses where 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, or a small group of people, or where you have a mentor or someone that can help you decipher and discern what that answer might be. I don't know if you know anything about the Quaker tradition, but the Quaker tradition has what's known as the Clearness Committee. And people can go and request a meeting with the Clearness Committee, a group of people, and they sit down and help them to discern big decisions in their life. It's a wonderful tradition that they have. Just think about it, a clearness committee to sit with somebody and help them to maybe get clear about how I should make that decision, or is that decision really right for me at this time? Now, perhaps you remember the story of the disciples immediately following Jesus' resurrection. They were together in the upper room when the resurrected Jesus appeared to them. The problem was that the first time that they met together and when Jesus came, Thomas was not there. And as a result, Thomas was the one who doubted. He was the one who doubted that Jesus was alive. However, 1 week later, Thomas was with the disciples when Jesus again appeared to them. It was then, as he was in a community of people, as he was there with the other disciples, it was then that Thomas experienced the resurrected Jesus. Thomas touched Jesus and he believed. And it was in this small group and community where Jesus made himself present. Because as he came, he didn't go just to one individual person, but as he came to the group, they themselves supported each other as they saw Jesus and as they bore witness to each other. Thomas's doubts were erased, and he had the love and the support of those other disciples. And Thomas needed that support because as the disciples then continued to bring the message of the resurrected Jesus, they couldn't do it alone. They needed that community to support them and help them as they became witnesses for Jesus Christ. We're going to read this passage together so that you're reminded of Jesus coming to meet with these disciples in this group. Now Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, what happened? He was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where his nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, when Thomas were with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." There are increasing numbers of people today who say they just don't know if Jesus is real. There are many people today who say they doubt. They doubt God's love and promises. There are some people who say they've decided in their own heads. They've just kind of thought about it, and they've decided in their own heads not to believe. The problem is, however, that these people are simply trying to figure this all out on their own. They're simply trying to rely on their own finite minds. They're simply trying to rely on their own limited intellect. Yet this will almost always lead to a dead end. Jesus always chooses to reveal himself in and through a community of faith. His resurrection is made real to us as we see Jesus living in others. His love is evident to us when it is experienced through caring Christ followers. And his power is witnessed when we hear testimonies of the miraculous things that Jesus is doing in individuals and in his church. Some people say, well, here's the Bible, just believe it. It's these words here. People say, I can't believe that. But when you have an experience of a community of faith who say, Jesus lives in me, that's a much more powerful message. It's a more powerful way to see that Jesus is truly alive. A study a few years ago was conducted by the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago, and it revealed that Americans today have less people to confide in today than they did in past generations. In fact, it found that the number of Americans with no close friends rose from 10% in 1985 to more than 24.6% today. And I read an article a couple of weeks ago that said for men, for us males here, that number now is 37.5%. Many men do not have someone that close. They might say, I got a buddy, we can talk about the Vikings, but many men do not have a friend that they can really talk to about the issues in their lives. Having community and friendships is so important. And I think this is also rapidly increasing today as people are moving more often and more people are isolated in areas as they've moved away, as families live farther and farther apart. And with all the busyness and constant activities, it has taken away oftentimes that precious time that we need to be able to develop those closer relationships that we used to have time to do. And as all the divisive politics and gossip and all those things that have happened, it caused many people today to say, I have no idea who I can trust. I have no idea who I can talk to and be honest with my feelings. That is why, my friends, I believe that Jesus gave us his church. It's why he gave us his community of faith. It is in Christ's community that we are to develop the closest and best relationships. It is there where we are to be completely real, sins, warts, and all. It is where we all come together to experience God's grace and his amazing love. It is where we can receive his acceptance and where we together receive his forgiveness. It is where we can pray for each other. We can encourage one another in living lives of faith. God's church is to be a place of love and community. Perhaps some of you saw the documentary film a few years ago, The March of the Penguins. It follows that emperor penguins of Antarctica on their incredible journey through the ice and snow to mating grounds up to 70 miles inland. And once the males have reached the breeding grounds and have been given responsibility for the eggs, they override their competitive nature and form a team for the sake of survival. And as massive storms set in, vicious winds pelt the penguins, which are huddled together. Watch a little bit of this clip.
As the fathers settled into their long wait at the breeding ground, the winter's second storm arrives. The temperature is now 80 degrees below zero. That's without taking into account the wind, which can blow 100 miles an hour. Though they can be aggressive during the rest of the year, at this time, the males are totally docile, a united and cooperative team. They brace against the storm by merging their 1,000 bodies into a single mass. They will take turns, each of them getting to spend some time near the center of their huddle, where it's warmer.
This, of course, I believe, is a picture of the Church of Jesus Christ. It's a picture of community at its very best. It is where we work together as a team. It's where we take turns in protecting and helping each other. It is where we take turns to help keep each other warm and safe and supported in our lives. It is a place where people are always welcome, no matter who you are, no matter what your life has been through, no matter what you're struggling with. It is a place where you are always welcome. And it's where people can find help. They can find help in the challenges of life. Remember this point today. When Jesus calls us to follow him, he always calls us into a community of faith. And remember also that wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in Jesus' name,